I'm Grath Telkin. I am the CEO of Sniggerly. I am oftentimes referred to as the person that runs PL, and that's a lie. It's actually Elise, so you can forward all your mails to him. I'm tired of getting them. I love this book project. This is amazing. Everything about all of the different great wars that we've had in this game is legitimately movie worthy. Like, this is something that someone should be putting down, because this stuff actually makes it out to the real world in the newspapers. Like, why would the New York Times care about a video game fight? Oh, because we blew up $300,000 worth of stuff. No big deal, right? Like, it's a little known fact that I was a goon for 60 days and that Vile Rat was my sponsor. I led a fleet from Paragon Soul that he was on, and we fought for like 9 hours over the course of all over that bottom space. We killed a Bob fleet, killed a bunch of Gods of Night and Day carriers, which was great because their ticker was Gonad. I miss them. And it was good. He told me I had to join the next day. Only there's 5,000 of you and you never stop talking. So I couldn't stand it. I had to leave.
What is Eve?
Eve is, that's a good question, because as a game it's kind of shit, right? And when you look at all the mechanics and the functionality and the spreadsheetness of it. So on the surface, it's hard for certain people to get. It is probably the best strategy game in the history of the world, because that's all it is all day long. At some level you are just strategizing. Like, you're just, that's it. You are playing against other players without ever doing anything at all. And that's kind of what makes it awesome. And that's probably why it's actually still around, because everything you do is against another player in some way. Whether you're mining a rock, are you selling your rock cheaper than that guy? The guy undercutting you, is he a cheesy Czechoslovakian botter that's really killing you with the one-disc thing? That's all against another player, and I think that makes it more of a social experiment than a game per se, because that's kind of what they created, this entire world where we all have to live together and function together and compete against each other constantly.
What makes something like an event like Eve Vegas special?
It actually ruins the game, because now we all know each other. So everybody came here, we all met, we got drunk. Nobody threw up on me. That was amazing. I'm super impressed by that. I didn't puke on anybody else, so now we're all friends. And it's hard to hate your friends. Like, these are people that you've hung out with. And at its core, that's bad, because Eve is a game that relies on hate to make war. If you don't hate the guy, like, it's really, I don't want to fight Laz anymore. I mean, like, I love his fuzzy little beard. And so it's really hard to go after goons, right? Like, because we've met, because we've all hung out, and now everybody's friends. So, but other than that, it is a chance, because Eve is such a close-knit game that any of the people that play it that actually make it out of the house and are socially unawkward enough to talk to other people come together like family, and you are here with family for a few days, and that's what makes it great. Eve doesn't rely on the actual gameplay for the game to keep going. There's like people that don't log in at all. Like Curl, I haven't seen him play forever, but he still loves to be part of the family. He plays Eve. He pays for 12 subscriptions for a game he doesn't play at all, just so he can stay with the community and stuff like that. I actually had a guy here tell me that something I said to him helped him like come out to his dad or some shit like that. I was like, please don't put that on me. Please don't ever put that kind of stress and pressure on me. I'm a carpenter. I was a foreman, so for me, telling people what to do kind of like is a thing that comes naturally, right? I excel at it. I maybe not the nicest way possible, but I'm a fucking carpenter. What do you want? Like, so to have someone tell me that something I did made them like be able to be more assertive and direct in their actual real life, that's weird. I think those are the stories that, not necessarily the big fights, because everybody talks about the big fights. If we have a good fight or a great fight or a really great campaign, there's 118 Reddit threads over 6 days about it with different dank words and memes thrown into it constantly. But like the little stories like that you don't hear are probably some of the better ones. The work that the Best of Us guys do with the members of the community. Stuff like that. That's probably what I think is some of the better stories. And it's hard to tell those, because if you're not socially active with the groups that are doing those types of things, you might miss some of those stories. But as far as, yeah, that's pretty much about it. Yeah, so the Fountain War with Montolio and Test at the end of that was a mistake. Montolio had stopped leading and started listening. So we could even back up a little bit before the Fountain War if you want to talk about what the Fountain War was, and that would be when PL and Test's relationship started to fall apart. And I guess at some point a certain portion of Test had not yet accepted the fact that we weren't going to be backing them fully. Like they didn't believe us when they say, when we go tourney mode, like nobody plays anything but tournament mode, that matters. And when I say that matters, that means all of our FCs love to play in the tournaments. Montolio, like what caused the Fountain War was, I think, just Montolio listening to people around him that wanted a war. He didn't need that fight. They had more than enough space. They didn't have to pick a fight with the goons at all. You guys could have been an entities that lived next to each other and generated content for years without ever having to go the way it did. He let his own ego get in his way. And that is what, like that was the entire causality of the Fountain War, was one man's ego. And that was just because he was too stupid to make his own decisions and decided to listen to other people. Sorry, is that too rude? Things worked out really poorly for Test entirely, because they compounded the mistake of starting the war by not listening to any advice that anyone gave them once it started. Like Shadu literally told Montolio not to fight. It was a bad fight to take. The Imperium was going to win. We didn't have anywhere near the committed forces or the committed FCs. We weren't going to risk our assets for something we saw as a lost cause, because at that point Test's fleet numbers weren't even that great. In fact, like until their couple final stands they had really terrible fleet participation throughout the entirety of the Fountain War, mostly from leadership seizure. Information stopped flowing downhill to line members and Test really early on. Directors started fighting amongst themselves, and people generally started getting in each other's way, and the bureaucracy of the entire group started to bog it down, and people just stopped caring. And the Imperium had spies everywhere and everything. And I think one day the Imperium turned off like all their defensive SBUs and flipped them all over. And like it was just so gruesome to watch. It was like a small child getting beaten to death by a Rottweiler. I have no idea why you would put your group through that, and why you wouldn't put the brakes on and pull up earlier. But he didn't. And in the end, they just blamed us.
What was the Pandemic Legion's stance during all of this time during the Fountain War?
Is haha a stance? What is our stance? Is laughing at you a stance?
Explain the relationship between Pandemic Legion and Test.
So it turns out Pandemic Legion likes new player groups. You wouldn't think so, because we are snobbish and we're mean. We are generally jerks to just about everybody we can get in range of. But for some reason, the enthusiasm that newer players bring livens Pandemic Legion up a lot. And so when we first invited them to come hang out and delve, it was to kill Morsis Mihi off, finally. That was like the first time we ever really hung out. And we pretty much just camped him on the Undock with Tempests and blapped things until Morsis Mihi cried and died. It was great. So that developed into us. Like Shadu found him, and once Shadu found his babies, it was pretty much all over with, and they loved him. It made him want to play the game more, to have 300 people that would just, at the instant he asked for anything, they would just run all over the place, killing each other, trying to get it done. And that for us, and it actually happened again once we fought Brave later on in life. We just found that hanging out with new players invigorates an old wheezing, dying alliance, and. So that was how the relationship between Test and PL started, but it didn't really end that way. I actually had a pretty good part in breaking it apart, because we sent Sort Dragon to help manage Test Alliance. He's a CSM this year. He now runs Darkness Alliance, and at that time he was a CEO of a corp in PL whose name I completely forget. Imagine that. But anyway, we sent him over, and he got a gigantic ego about it, and he decided to butt heads with me, and that just generally never works out great for anybody. There were some screaming matches, and I had just absorbed a corp called Nork, Quezon Capitals, and the first thing I did was order Quezon Capitals to take a small roaming fleet around test space and start killing people until Sort Dragon gave me what I wanted. It took about 15 minutes. And it made a lot of hate between the two groups. It was good, and that was the start of the rift. I almost lost one of my directors over it. Jeff Rader, that's the maddest Jeff Rader's ever been to me. He was super pissed. And so I have sense for Jeff Rader's mercy, because he catches all his shit when I do stuff like this. So for his mercy, I've toned my temper back a little bit. But that was the start of it, and then after that is when they decided they were going to start fighting this war, and just things weren't the same between us, and the tournament had started, and yeah, it was never going to be the same as it was when we were just in Delve. I actually think they got way too greedy way too fast, You know, they just swelled up and took too much. They had Delve. They didn't need Delve and period basis. They didn't really need Fountain, and they didn't need the confrontation they started. They could have kept doing exactly what they were doing, and things would have been phenomenally amazing. Test would still be where Test is if Montoya had gotten fired earlier.